This is Jean Marie Ward for Buzzy Magazine. With me today is best-selling author Robin Hobb, who is also Megan Lindholm. Welcome, Robin.
Oh, thank you for having me here.
One of the things that fascinates me about your writing is that you seem to view magic as not necessarily a positive force. It can be very dangerous for your characters. Am I reading this right?
Well, I think magic, of course, is power, and as we've all learned from infancy, practically, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So it's not that magic is a destructive or negative force so much as that it can be in the wrong hands, or people using it to extreme ends of any kind. So I would say it is the idea that magic is a very powerful thing and that it can be seriously misused.
So themes of responsibility are very important to you. I mean, I can see that at work in the Farseer novels especially, that you have to be responsible for your actions.
You have to be responsible, and my feeling about magic is it always has to have a cost. And when you take economics, you learn about opportunity cost. That if you have $1, maybe you can get 2 candy bars, but the opportunity cost to getting to the 2 candy bars is that you cannot buy the toy that was $1. You have to make choices. And magic very much has opportunity costs. I think you have to have that in a fantasy, because if the magic comes without consequences, without cost, it's like a story where you have a magic ring that gives you an infinite number of wishes. There is no story.
Mm-hmm. Yes, or the story is the wishes go horribly wrong.
One after the other. Yes, yeah. And we frequently see that in the story of you have 3 wishes, and the first one goes wrong, and the second one you try to fix it, and sometimes by the third one you get it right.
When you started writing The Assassin's Apprentice, did you ever imagine that the realm of the Elderlings would get so large? I mean, did you plan that many books?
I didn't specifically plan that many books, but I think that with any idea that you carry with you for a long time before you begin writing, you know the history of things as well as the future of things. So I could probably go back to the beginning of the Farseer trilogy and Assassin's Apprentice, and if I cared to write backwards from there, I could write just as many books about what went before, how chivalry met Berwick, and what the story is between Berwick and Patience, and back through the history. Mm-hmm. Because as a writer, I know that there are events that happened long ago, from seismic events to various people coming to power, that have affected the story that I'm telling today, and I know that those effects will echo down through the history of that world, or the future of that world.
You mentioned that you had the world in your head for a long time before you started writing it. How long? When did it first occur to you?
I started out writing on a Smith Corona-Matic typewriter years ago, and this is very much predates computers, and saving a file on disk or saving a file on your hard drive predates the K-Pro even, which was my first computer. So when you're writing a story, you always reach some point at which you get an idea for another story that looks much more attractive than what you're working on. And if you get sidetracked, you never finish the story that you're working on. So I developed the habit of, when one of those ideas popped into my head, I would grab whatever scrap paper was handy and write down 1 or 2 sentences, and I would just open my top drawer and drop it in. Mm-hmm. And then when I would get stuck for an idea or stuck in a story, I would take out these pieces of paper and play with them and look at them and see if I remembered what it was that I was thinking of when I wrote down A Blind King, which is, 6 months later you're going, I don't even remember what that was about. But I remember it very well. It was a torn flap off an envelope, and on it said, "What if magic was addictive and the addiction was completely destructive?" Mm-hmm. So that was the first little tiny piece of what would become eventually the skill.
Mm-hmm.
The other idea that was in there was to deliberately take every fantasy trope and cliche that I could think of and try to knock all the rest off them and make them work again. Because, of course, if something is a cliche or a trope, it's because it speaks to us on some level. There is some key there that fits almost everybody's heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can get back to that, you can tell a very compelling story. So those were the two things that were in the desk drawer for a long, long time before I realized that actually these were two parts of a whole, and that when I put them together I had the beginning of the Farseer trilogy.
You mentioned the names Chivalry, and there's King Shrewd, and does that play into the idea of the cliches, or was there another reason for naming people so closely to their apparent character?
There is a very old tradition of naming magic. There is the magic that says, if I know your true name, I have a measure of power over you.
Mm-hmm.
And we see it in a variety of cultures. Sometimes, if you look at our own culture, when children are christened, they're often given the name, a saint's name,
Mm-hmm.
that has, one hopes, the qualities of that saint. Or perhaps you are named after your great-great-aunt Agatha because she was a wonderful person and you want to keep that name going in your family. There are cultures in which children are not given their true name until they are approaching adulthood. Cultures in which you are given a secret name that you are not to divulge, that is your true spirit name. So all of these things, the idea of naming it, it's a very old magic, it's a very powerful magic.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided that I would employ it in this culture for the people to say that, if I choose the right name for my child and then I seal that name to the child with earth and with water and with flame, the child will grow up to embody that characteristic.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the thought behind that.
You talk about cultural magics that exist in our world, and you've seen some of that firsthand. You've lived both in the lower 48, and when you were a child you moved up to a rather rural, remote part of Alaska. Then you moved back down to the lower 48, moved back to Alaska, now you're back down in the 48. Do you think that multiculturalism of your background has played a role in what you write?
I would say yes, it does, but I would think that it predates my Alaska days with being brought up on a lot of mythology and a lot of the very old fairy tales that did come to us from many, many cultures. The Russian tales and tales from France and from England, of course, but also Germany and the ones that came from a variety of European cultures. So I think when you read widely in myth and legends, you pick up a lot of cultural things from earlier times without even intending to.
Was there any particular strand of mythology or story that resonated to the young you that you can see in your writing today?
I always liked the Norse mythology the best, I think, though I certainly enjoyed the Greek and Romans. I loved the tales of Arcadia with the faun teaching the young heroes everything that they had to know. There's too many to name. There are just wonderful threads that when you read them as a child, you're being indoctrinated into all of the archetypes without realizing it.
One of the most fascinating stories, though, didn't happen on the page. You started writing as Megan Lindholm, and you had wonderful novels as Megan Lindholm. How did Megan Lindholm become Robin Hobb?
That name change came about as a convergence of two things. I had written as Megan Lindholm for 12 or 14 years, and I had done well enough with it. I got good reviews, and including some starred ones, but my sales always were mediocre. I remained very solidly a mid-list author at mid-list advances. About the time that it all began to happen, my then agent, Patrick Delahunt, was retiring from agenting to follow new directions with his life, but he was finding homes for all of his writers. So he placed me with an agent named Ralph Vichananza. And Ralph had established a career selling mostly foreign rights, taking U.S. science fiction and fantasy and selling it to the European markets, for instance. But he was looking to get into domestic rights as well. I wrote a couple of books with Ralph, and then I had sent him the outline and some sample chapters for something that at that time I was referring to as Chivalry's Bastard. And Ralph looked at it and said, "This is sufficiently different from what you've been doing before that I would like to set it apart with a different pseudonym or byline." And that sounded like fun to me. I've never had a particularly strong attachment to my name, so I had no real objections to finding a new name. So with the okay of the publisher, we set out to decide on a new byline for it. And I went about it in a fairly scientific manner. I went to the bookstores and I looked to see what level was at eye level in the fantasy and science fiction section, because I had the experience of having to climb up to reach Asimov's or crawl along the floor to find Zelazny. So I wanted something right in the middle. And when I looked at the shelf, it was Frank Herbert and Robert Heinlein and Barbara Hambly. There was just a very good neighborhood, a lot of good writers on that shelf that would bring people to look at the shelf. So I decided that the last name would have to start with an H, and it would have to be short so that I could be in big letters on a cover. My previous experience with Lindholm was that it became very small when they had to fit it all on one line on a cover. So then I wanted to think of a name that had a lot of nice attachments to it, a good feel to it. So I came up with Hob as the kettle is on the hob, and hobgoblins. Later on somebody pointed out that it's the first half of the word hobbit. But Hob sounded like a good last name. It took us longer to come up with the first name Robin. We wanted something that was androgynous, that is neither male nor female, and we settled on Robin because it's Robin Hood, it's Robin Goodfellow, it's the first Robin of spring. It has just a lot of nice attachments. So that became the new byline, was Robin Hob.
And it's worked.
It worked wonderfully.
Yes. The magic of the name.
Exactly.
Right. What are you working on now?
Right now, we're wrapping up the Rainwild Chronicles with the final book will be called Blood of Dragons, and this follows Dragon Keeper, Dragon Haven, City of Dragons, and then Blood of Dragons will actually wrap up that whole piece of story.
Is there anything that you'd like to add? Any message to your readers or our viewers?
Abject thanks for being readers. I mean, that's what allows me to keep on writing. I have no doubt that if I had no readers, I would still be writing, but I would also probably be still working an 8-hour-a-day job and writing in 2 or 3 hours a night, rather than being able to sit down at the computer and saying, and now we're going to have a really good day with lots and lots of words.
Thank you so much, Robin, for talking to us today.
And for the opportunity.
Thank you. And thank you for Buzzy Magazine.